All right, so you're here with us because you want to get right to the important stuff, right? No beating around the bush. We get it. Today, we're diving deep into this review of Augusta Precious Metals and their one-on-one web conference they offer, specifically all about investing in gold and silver for retirement using these gold IRAs.
And for this deep dive, we're looking at a review by Doug Young,
Yeah, Doug Young.
who has over 20 years of experience with financial investing, commodities trading,
Wow.
and most importantly, a deep understanding of gold IRAs and the companies that offer them. So, when he talks about this stuff, it's worth listening to.
Definitely someone who knows what he's talking about. And our mission here is to pull out the most important parts of his review to help you really understand what this web conference is all about.
Yeah, what it offers, who it's for,
Exactly.
and some of those key insights that he's sharing about investing in precious metals for retirement.
Okay, so jumping right in, what was the first thing that really stood out to Doug Young about this web conference?
Well, the first thing he mentions is that it's free and it's personalized one-on-one.
Oh, wow.
That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And it's really focused, laser focused on gold and silver investments within a gold IRA.
Oh, okay.
And it's presented by Devlin Steele,
Okay.
Augusta's director of education, and he's a Harvard-trained economist.
A Harvard economist talking about precious metals. All right, I'm interested. So who would you say this is really for?
Yeah, who should be signing up for this web conference? Doug Young is very clear that this is not just some basic introduction to precious metals for the average person.
Right.
This is really aimed at investors who have at least $100,000 in savings,
Okay.
and they are seriously considering precious metals as part of their retirement plan.
Gotcha.
So this is for people who are a little bit further along in their investing journey, and they really want to learn more about how precious metals might play a role in their long-term financial security.
So not for beginners.
Not for beginners, no.
This is for people with a decent nest egg who are really looking at precious metals as a serious part of their retirement strategy.
Absolutely.
So for those people who fit that description, what does Doug Young say are some of the biggest benefits of attending?
Well, he points to several really compelling benefits. The top of the list is the personalized education. So you're getting a one-on-one session, meaning that the information that you're getting is specifically tailored to your financial situation, your goals for retirement. It's not just a generic presentation. It's really about you and your needs.
That makes sense.
And then, of course, you have the expertise of Devlin Steele. I mean, having a Harvard economist explain these concepts, it really brings a level of credibility and insight that's hard to find elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. So a custom-tailored session with that kind of background, I mean, that sounds super valuable. What else did Doug Young say was a plus for attending?
He really emphasizes this in-depth overview of the gold and silver markets that you get during the web conference. You're going to walk away with a much deeper understanding of how these metals can act as a hedge against inflation.
Okay, a hedge against inflation, yeah.
When the dollar's purchasing power goes down, gold and silver, they tend to hold their value, kind of like a safe haven.
Yeah, they can be a little bit more stable in those uncertain times.
Exactly. And then on top of that, the conference also gives you the steps you need to take to actually set up a Precious Metals IRA.
Huh.
How to do it. And then they also offer ongoing support from Augusta Precious
Oh,
Metals.
nice.
And of course, for anyone who meets that savings requirement that we talked about, the $100,000,
Yeah.
this entire educational experience is totally free. No cost, no obligation.
So you can learn, get educated, and there's no pressure.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. So let's talk a little bit about the web conference itself. What can someone who attends actually expect when they log in? What's it like?
Yeah, what's the experience? Well, Doug Young describes it as very interactive.
Okay.
Not just some boring presentation where you're just passively listening. It's very engaging.
Okay.
And a big part of that is Devlin Steele.
The Harvard economist?
That's right. He's apparently very good at explaining these complicated financial ideas in a way that's easy to understand. He could break it down and make it clear for people who might not have that financial background.
I see.
And then another big plus is that you can actually ask questions directly.
Oh, okay.
Get your questions answered in real time.
Oh,
So that means the discussion is going to stay focused on what matters most to you. You're not just getting a one-size-fits-all presentation. You're getting your specific questions addressed.
that personal interaction I feel like is really key, right? It's one thing to listen to general advice, but to be able to ask your own questions and get those answered by an expert, that's huge.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the tailoring goes even further than just the questions and answers.
Okay.
The web conference itself is designed to adapt and focus on the areas that are most relevant to your individual financial situation. They take into account what you're bringing to the table, what your concerns are, what your goals are.
Oh, interesting.
And then on top of all of that, attendees also get access to even more educational resources after the live session.
Oh, okay.
Articles, videos, things like that. So you're not just getting a one-time download of information. You can continue to learn and grow your knowledge even after the web conference is over.
So they really set you up for success. It's not just a one and done kind of thing. So for someone listening who's saying, hey, this sounds like something I should check out, how should they prepare? How can they get the most out of this web conference?
Yeah, preparation is really important. Doug Young points out that registering is easy enough. You can do it online, or you can call them at 855-386-4202. But to really get the most out of it, he recommends having some of your key financial documents on hand. Things like account statements, details about your retirement plan, any investment summaries. This will help you ask more focused questions and really make the most of the conversation.
That makes a ton of sense. You want to be prepared to have that personalized discussion.
Exactly. And he also suggests getting a basic understanding of some key precious metal concepts beforehand.
Okay.
You've probably heard these terms thrown around, things like bullion and coins.
Mm-hmm.
Bullion refers to those bars of refined metal, those ingots.
Yeah.
And coins, often they're issued by governments, and they can sometimes have what's called numismatic value, which is like a collector's value on top of their metal value. So just understanding that basic difference is helpful. And he gives a really good list of questions to consider asking during the session.
Oh, okay. Give me some examples.
Yeah, so you want to think about things like, how do precious metals compare to traditional investments? How have they performed during times of economic uncertainty? How do you actually set up a precious metals IRA? What are the tax implications? How are your assets secured? And what's Augusta's buyback program like? Those are all great questions to have in mind going into the web conference.
That's a great starting point for anyone who's thinking about attending. You come prepared, you're an active participant, you ask those questions, you're going to get so much more out of it.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the investment insights themselves.
Sure.
What kind of information can people expect to learn about the precious metals market, gold and silver?
Yeah. So the review highlights this really comprehensive overview of the gold and silver markets that they provide. They talk about historical trends and prices, how gold and silver have performed over time,
Yeah,
current market dynamics, what's happening right now, what are the factors that are driving prices,
gotcha.
and even some discussion about where things might be headed in the future.
Oh, interesting.
And it's really about getting a deeper understanding of what actually drives these markets. So, for example, they'll talk about gold's role as a safe haven asset.
Okay.
During times of economic volatility, when things are uncertain, people often flock to gold because it tends to hold its value.
Yeah, and then they'll also discuss silver, which is interesting because it's both a precious metal, but it also has these important industrial applications.
Okay.
So it's got that dual demand, which can influence its price in a different way.
So it's a more nuanced approach than just buy gold and hope for the best.
Absolutely. It's about educating yourself and understanding the factors that play into the market.
For sure, for sure. A lot of people are talking about inflation right now. So what about precious metals as a hedge against inflation? Is that something they cover?
Absolutely. That's going to be a central theme of the web conference. They really delve into how precious metals can potentially protect your wealth when the purchasing power of the dollar declines.
Right.
So they'll probably look at some historical examples, periods of high inflation, and how gold and silver performed during those times. And the idea is that, by having precious metals in your portfolio, you might be able to weather those inflationary storms a little bit better.
Preserve your wealth in those times when the dollar is losing its purchasing power. Now, let's talk specifically about retirement savings.
Yep.
What insights does Doug Young's review suggest this web conference offers regarding precious metals IRAs?
Yeah, so the web conference will definitely cover long-term strategies for incorporating gold and silver into your retirement plan through a precious metals IRA.
Okay, so not just buying gold, but understanding how to use it specifically for your retirement.
Exactly. And they'll explain the tax advantages, which can be significant.
Oh, okay.
And they'll walk you through the practical aspects as well. Like, what are the IRS rules around storing physical gold and silver within an IRA? Where can you keep it?
Oh,
How do you make sure you're compliant with all the regulations? So the goal is to really give you a clear roadmap for building that long-term financial security using precious metals within this retirement framework.
That sounds really helpful. Now, you mentioned earlier that Doug Young includes feedback from people who have actually attended these web conferences.
That's right.
What's the general sense? Are people happy with what they're getting?
The feedback seems incredibly positive overall. Doug Young highlights that attendees consistently praise the personalized nature of the sessions. They love that one-on-one attention, and they're really impressed with the expertise they encounter. Many of them say they found the information very thorough, and they really appreciate the chance to engage directly with experts like Devlin Steele and ask those specific questions that are on their mind.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is that even with Doug Young's extensive experience in precious metals, he's been doing this for 20 years, he explicitly endorses Augusta's educational program and Devlin Steele's insights.
Wow.
He actually says that he continues to learn from them, which is a pretty strong testament to the quality of the information they're sharing.
That's huge. When someone who's been in the industry for that long says, I'm still learning from these guys, that speaks volumes.
It really does.
So let's say someone attends this web conference. They're excited about the information. They're like, okay, what do I do now? What are some of the logical next steps they could consider taking? Yeah, what's next? Well, for a lot of people, the natural next step is to explore setting up a precious metals IRA. You've got the foundational knowledge from the web conference, and Augusta Precious Metals will actually help you through the entire process.
Oh, great.
So they'll help you open a self-directed IRA, transfer the funds, select the right precious metals that are approved by the IRS, and then they also emphasize this lifetime account support.
Oh, nice.
So you're not just left on your own. They're there to guide you along the way as you navigate this.
That ongoing support, I think, is so important for people who are just starting out with this.
Absolutely.
What other resources did Doug Young mention for those who want to keep learning, who want to dive deeper into the precious metals world?
Yeah, well, Augusta offers a whole range of additional educational materials. So they have articles, videos, webinars. They send out regular market updates, things like that. So you can really continue your education at your own pace, and you can stay informed about what's happening in the precious metals market.
So they give you the knowledge, and then they equip you to keep learning and keep up with the latest developments.
Exactly.
Perfect. Now, Doug Young also included a section in his review that addressed some frequently asked questions.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful to touch on a few of those that might be on people's minds right now.
Sure.
So for starters, is this web conference really free? A lot of people might be skeptical. Is there a catch?
Yeah, I understand the skepticism, but according to the review, it is genuinely free. As long as you meet that $100,000 savings requirement,
Right.
there are no hidden costs, no obligations. They really are just trying to educate potential investors.
Okay, good to know. And what kind of topics can you expect them to cover in those free sessions?
Well, the FAQ really reinforces what we've been talking about.
Right.
Historical performance of gold and silver, how they can act as a hedge against inflation, the whole process of setting up a precious metals IRA, different investment strategies for the long term, all of that. And it confirms that the Q&A session, where you can get your questions answered directly, is a big part of the experience.
Okay. And for people who are interested, how do they actually sign up for this web conference?
It sounds pretty straightforward. You can either go to the Augusta Precious Metals website and fill out the registration form online, and then they'll send you a confirmation email with all the details about your session. Or if you prefer, you can just call them directly at 855-386-4202.
Easy enough. And what happens after the web conference? Is there any follow-up or support provided?
Yeah, the review indicates that Augusta Precious Metals is there to help you if you decide to set up a precious metals IRA.
Okay.
They'll guide you through that process. And they also offer that ongoing support and access to their educational resources to help you manage your investments over time.
So you're not left high and dry.
Not at all. They're with you every step of the way.
Awesome. All right, so let's bring it all together. What's the big takeaway here from Doug Young's review of this Augusta Precious Metals web conference?
I think the main message is that Augusta Precious Metals is offering a really valuable free resource. This personalized one-on-one web conference led by a Harvard-trained economist,
Right.
specifically designed for folks with significant savings who are considering adding gold and silver to their retirement plan.
Okay.
And Doug Young's review suggests that this conference offers a lot of insightful education and really practical information on precious metals investing.
Exactly. So through this deep dive, you've essentially gotten a shortcut to understanding the key points of this web conference,
Right.
the potential benefits that Doug Young highlights, who it's designed for, all without having to read the whole review yourself.
Yeah, we've distilled it down to the most important parts.
And It's interesting because now that we've gone through all of this, we've talked about precious metals, we've talked about retirement, we've talked about inflation. I'm curious for you listening, what are the first questions that come to mind when you think about your own long-term financial security?
Yeah.
And what role, if any, could precious metals play in that? It's worth taking some time to reflect on those questions and maybe explore them a bit further.
It's a big decision. It's worth considering.
Definitely.
And Augusta Precious Metals might be a good resource to help you understand it better.
For sure. All right, that's going to wrap it up for our deep dive today. As always, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.